What is up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Ronnie Asani Show. In this episode, I talked to Dean Salakas, the chief party dude at The Party People, which is an Australian market leader for party supplies and costumes. You might have seen Dean or The Party People on the Shark Tank show and numerous other media outlets. The man is a PR machine, but more importantly, an e-commerce expert and an entrepreneur with strong track record. We sit down and talk about his story, how he helped grow the business, and we share many insights that you can take on board as an entrepreneur or business leader. What is up, everyone? This is Ronnie, your host of the Ronnie Asani Show. My number one goal in this show is to bring you some of the most amazing and accomplished individuals in the business world to share with you some real, raw, and authentic business insights. We sit down and talk in a casual setting, nothing too serious, yet we unpack some of the most incredible ideas, concepts, and best practices. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh, and don't forget to share the love. Like, share, and subscribe. Gracias, amigos. All right, we are live. Dean, thank you so much for making it here, man. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
And it's such a pleasure to sit down and talk to you.
Great to be here.
Thank you. So I want to kick off with the world's coolest job title that you have, Chief Party Dude.
Yeah.
When I went on LinkedIn and I checked it out, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, man. Everyone is serious about their titles.
Yeah.
And yours is like, I'm the Chief Party Dude.
Yeah, I wanted to have a serious title in the beginning. I was so pumped about being a CEO, and
Yeah.
then I stopped taking it seriously all of a sudden. So
Yeah. I mean, I think depending on the organization, obviously, some organizations you're gonna have like, obviously the official titles and all that stuff. But in the startup world, or in a business like the Party People, you guys don't take yourself you take your business seriously, but you don't take yourselves seriously by virtue of being in an environment that is all cool and fun, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it wouldn't make sense if if you're party supplies or a party business and then it's all serious titles.
Yeah, I mean, we're we're a business that likes to have fun. Like I'm sure a lot do. So
Yeah.
we the title actually came up with it just came up in random conversation we're having in the office, and it kind of stuck one day, and my graphic designer was teasing me a little bit and did like an Indian with a headrest and had a chief party guy out of like an animated version of myself, and that kind of then stuck from there.
Yeah.
But then it became quite deliberate because it was obviously very much aligned with our brand, who I wanted to be as part of the brand. And I started this journey of personal branding as well at the time. So it just sort of fell into place really nicely.
And we'll go through the journey of your personal brand and the brand of the company as well. Perhaps we can just go a little bit into what the Party People does. I'm sure most people with the crazy, tremendous PR that you guys have done over the last, God knows how many years. But if we can go through what you guys do and focus on, and maybe a bit about the story and how it started. You were telling me when we first talked last time how it started. So I think it would be cool if we kind of go through that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't know where to start. There was a lot of questions in there, and I could probably talk all day on all of it. I guess I'll try to keep it short. But yeah, I mean, the business started with my mum, who was a clown 30 years ago.
Yep.
And, she just loved helping people have parties. That's what she loved to do. And so she was clowning. She was back in the 80s. It was very different parties then. She was making chocolate crackles and fairy bread and taking them as the clown, did the catering, helped them clean up afterwards, and then would take everything away. So it was a very different environment back then. And then she, from there, decided to open up a party store. And that's kind of how it all just started.
Did you ask him one day, like, Mom, what made you start a party company? Or like, why did you get into, like, first of all, having that profession of being a clown, and then also starting a company and doing all these parties? Like, my dad is an engineer, and I always used to ask him, like, what made you get into that, Was it something like you had that curiosity of like knowing what made them venture into it, or?
I kind of know the whole thing, but I mean, my mum saw a gap at the time, and back then in the 80s, party shops there weren't really many.
Yeah.
They were around, but they weren't many. So she just saw an opportunity that there was a massive gap in that market. A key focus for her was actually having a venue in the back of the shop where kids could have their parties. And back then there weren't, now there's all sorts of fun type venues, trampoline venues and rock climbing venues. Back then there was nothing. So just having a party room was actually a novel concept.
Yeah.
And so she launched that. About 2 years later, McDonald's started doing party rooms, which really destroyed that side of the business. But the retail was going. So she just went with where the sales were. So the sales were in the balloons and the decorations. So she expanded that and got rid of the venue and focused on selling party supplies. So it's kind of, my mum just sort of followed the business the way it sort of grew organically with what customers wanted and where the money was.
And it sounds like she was agile and she was able to pivot.
Yeah.
Seeing McDonald's going into that same space. Okay, what can I focus on to continue to grow and not be hindered by a massive company that's just, taking me over?
Yeah, yeah.
And so at what point, so it's yourself and your brother who look after the business now?
Yeah, we took over. We took over in 2007.
Yeah.
My mum at the time was actually looking to get out of the business and sell. And at the same time, my career was sort of growing where it was, and so was my brother's. Yeah. So I was working at Woolworths as a business analyst, and my brother actually it was literally one Friday afternoon. My parents had an offer to buy the business off them from someone else.
Yeah.
And, earlier that day, and my brother said, why don't we do this? Let's take it on. And there's a massive gap here. We think we can grow it. Let's go focus on the digital and grow the digital. Let's have a go. And pretty much we made that decision that afternoon. Said, let's do it. We got all excited, and a few months later, we'd done all the legals and everything and bought the business.
What year was that?
That was 2007.
2007.
Yeah.
So digital was still very much in the early stages.
It was still early. I mean, I actually, in 98, my mum got me to actually launch the website. So she got me together with a bunch of uni students that were in IT.
Yep.
At the time, there was no web area of the world. Then it was IT. And we built a website, which I maintained in high school in 99 by the time we launched.
Oh, you built it yourself?
Well,
you had
the IT guys built it, but they built it in very basic technology that was back then. And it was e-commerce, and we'd launched with Click and Collect. So we were the first party store certainly to be online, and obviously one of the early e-commerce players in Australia as well. So look, there wasn't huge volume at the time, but certainly we got excited by one order a month at the time.
Of course.
But then things started to pick up, and obviously I was always involved in the digital, and that was another part of the reason my brother and I took over. My parents at the time were, still cautious about online, even though it was their idea to go online. I wanted to really go hard with digital marketing. And my parents were like, no, we've got to keep focusing our budget on yellow pages. And I was like, we got to go hard on digital. Forget this yellow pages thing. It's old school. No one's going to have the books in 5 years. Yeah. Well, they're still around, believe it or not.
Yeah.
They provide a service. But my whole thing was, look, we came up with a formula for how we should be doing digital marketing. And I tried to build the case like I did at Woolworths as a business analyst. So I built a case and said to my parents, come on, let's go hard. Here's the formula. This stacks up. And they were just like, nah, take it easy.
Step by step.
So when we took over, we literally just took all the budgets off and went hard off the bat. And we saw triple digit growth, and that was actually a problem, the growth it became for us over those first few years. But
for your back end for fulfillment?
Fulfillment. I mean, at the time we did that, the sales took off, but we had no processes. I mean, we picked the orders from the shelf of the store. We drive them up to the local post office. It was a very clunky operation. Even to the fact our picking slip didn't have images. We just knew what all the products were, so we could pick them. Where when we started hiring people, they couldn't pick the orders because they couldn't figure out what was what. So everything was a bit of a mess when we started to grow, and that was that was certainly a real challenging time. But things definitely grew from there.
So at some point you realized that, okay, my front end sales and marketing is going too well. now I have to get my house in order. I have to get my supply chain, my fulfillment, my, you know, the back end to be on point. Was it something you had to learn, or were you like, okay, let me get the right people, or let me get the person who has experience to run that part?
I would say, you know, I mean, I was a business analyst, so it was kind of my job prior to figure out solutions to problems. And so I guess I had a passion for problem solving, business problem solving. It's probably a very specific type of problem solving. So, you know, I built things. I built spreadsheets to solve problems. I engaged our IT guys. I'd actually give them the spec and say, this is what I want you to go build. So I actually came up with solutions to the problems as well. I mean, our problems were all across the business, not just IT related. So where possible, we found spreadsheet solutions or IT solutions. I mean, capacity was an issue. That's not it's not an IT fix. It was pretty much put in as many computers, do double shifts, pick day and night, get more real estate. So the problems just kept coming as we grew. It just kept, I say problems, obviously it was definitely a big problem to have, but certainly big challenges as we grew.
That's amazing. Do you think, okay, so what are, if you were to say the top 2 or 3 keys to success of the Party People ever since you and your brother took it over, would you be able to pinpoint 2 or 3 things that you think are like, okay, it was the digital marketing, it was like, you know, us shifting to a digital focus model, or it was maybe focus on a specific product range, or was it the customer experience, or was it the niche, or the fact that you guys were in a space that not a lot of people were in? I'm always fascinated by, you know, the story from the entrepreneur or the business owner, as far as what are the things that they really think were the key success to their success.
Yeah, look, I'll probably put it down to, first off, marketing, having a marketing formula, which I'll go into in a second, actually having a proper strategy and a formula for marketing, where we actually named it, and I speak a lot about this at conferences, but we call it the uncapped marketing budget. It's basically marketing with no budget, but a formula. And so you just basically spend as much as you can under that formula. So that's probably a key one. The second one would be complementary skill sets between me and my business partner is another probably key factor in that. You know, I love dealing with spreadsheets. You know, I love it. My brother couldn't think of anything worse. Likewise, he loves managing people, and I couldn't think of anything worse.
Right.
So we have these skill sets that
it's
are
like
very
yin and
complementary.
yang.
And it's just like we love doing the areas. So our roles in the business have fallen into the things we love, and they just complement each other so nicely. And so for that would probably be another key factor. And then the last one would probably just be people in general. I know people always talk about it, but just having the right people in the right roles to drive the business forward. So I don't know if you want to go into them or what, but we could talk all day about all of them.
Dude, I'm here the whole day. Chief Party Dude, I'm here.
Well, we can go into the night. That's my job title. So
interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. I want to dissect actually all 3 of them. And I'm in marketing, so I'd love to go over what you mentioned around digital marketing with no budget. I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it and executing it. A lot of brands, a lot of businesses do have budgets. So perhaps not for me, but for some people who hear that concept the first time they hear it, like, oh, okay. But I totally get and understand what you mean and where you're coming from. And I think it's such a smart way of going about it. So what you're saying is, and I'll let you obviously explain in more details, is we have a formula that brings us the return on investment, that brings us the outcomes that we want. And it's just open up the tap. And if it's working, keep reinvesting.
Yeah, I guess it's probably to look at it this way. I guess with you know, when I went to uni, I did marketing at uni actually.
Yeah.
And you know, they had that saying, you probably might remember it, where they said 50% of my marketing works, I just don't know which 50%.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And with digital, you know, it's actually it's not a legitimate concept because you can track everything.
Yep.
You can measure it, and you can see where your sales are coming from. So you know what's working and what's not. And that's kind of where, like I said, the reason we took over the business. I was saying to my parents, right, we know we're spending. I mean, at the time we were Google's first customer, believe it or not. And
in Australia?
In Australia, in Australia, not globally, but Australia. When they launched, that's a whole nother story. I don't know if you have all day.
Is that for real?
For real. I'll tell you that story before I go into the reason.
Yeah.
But when we launched on Google, we were paying 1 cent a click. And that's unheard of today, obviously.
That is unheard of.
But we launched on Google. I was actually doing a university project on ways to improve the business. It was my final year. That was in 2003. And Google was just about to launch AdWords while I was doing that project. And then I came across it and said, we've got Yahoo over here. At the time, they had a company managing all their real estate, which is called Overture.
Yeah.
And Google. And Google's got a marketplace where you bid whatever you want. Overture here wants to charge $2 a click. This is back in 2003. So I thought they were crazy. No way I'm paying $2 a click. But over here, I only have to pay 1 cent a click. And there's no competition. So every keyword I put up, I was paying 1 cent a click for off the bat.
Yeah.
And, so it was very easy off the bat. All you had to do was have a keyword. That was the strategy. That's all it was. It was that simple. But it did get more complicated as competition started entering.
Yeah.
Then the formula started kicking in, which was what we're working at is that we didn't need to be in position one. What we needed to have is a spend per click, which had a conversion rate attached to it. So we need to work out what was our conversion rate, what was our per click rate, how much are we spending per click to get that conversion rate. And then what we came up with was a formula where we knew that, I'm just going to talk very basic here, but our average sale was $100, just to make it easy numbers as well. It was close to that though, not far off it. It was the average sale of $100. It cost us to pick an order, all costs, all variable costs included, let's say including cost of goods and everything, $80. So we had $20 left profit every time we got an order. And if we were spending $10 per conversion,
then we
were banking $10 every time.
Yep.
By knowing that formula, I mean, it sounds really simple, but by knowing that, and we go into a lot of detail. Our whole balance sheet is based around this formula, our P&L, sorry. And we were able to then scale our marketing with no budget. We're just going, look, if we're spending $10 and getting 20 back every time, I just want to do that as many times as I possibly can. How can I do as many? So if I'm spending 1 and getting 2 back or 5, whatever it was, anytime that formula was positive, go hard, no budget, just spend whatever you want. And it was an instant return. So it wasn't like we invested in marketing and we might get our return on investment in 5 years.
You get paid like 2 months. No, you're getting paid on the day.
I spend $1 on Google today and I got that order came in the door. So it really worked. It was a formula that worked for us and helped us really scale that business off, we got to a point where we had 3 million keywords in Google, put it that way. So we just went all crazy. And it was never about being in position one. We didn't even care about the position. It was all about the formula working. What level of spend did we have to, what level of bidding did we have to put in to get a return on investment? So if it meant sitting in position 10 on a particular keyword and that was profitable, that was fine. As long as I'd rather be in position 10 and making money than position 1 and losing money on a particular ad.
So 3 million keywords, help me understand that, because that is crazy number. So were you also going after a lot of the keywords that are not purchase intent?
But still, and that's where it became interesting. And then this formula got broken down into a lot of detail because different keywords had different conversion rates and different sales level. If you bid on a word like party supplies, which is the most the hardest keyword to rank on in our industry, in party, it's very hard to be profitable on that. And being in position 1, I don't think anyone in the top 3 positions on that are making any money. But position 4, 5, and 6, if you've got what we have is some competitive advantage, we're able to rank in those and still be profitable. And we may not get all the volume, but we're getting the volume that's profitable, and that's what's important to us. And we see this. I think Google took away their insights, but for a while there, we were looking at to seeing, you could actually see who was ranking where and at what percentage of the time. And we were typically ranking in position 4, 5, and 6, or I think average, let's say position 5 for a particular keyword. But we were appearing 90% of the time. Where our competitors, there might have been 10 companies ranking in the top 3, but they wouldn't be there all the time because their budgets were kicking in and they were getting You know, they were spending too much money, losing. You know, so you're losing money, so you end up not just blowing it all the time. So we found that sometimes those positions further down, you might have constantly competitors coming in, paying whatever it takes to get position one. Those positions or top positions, but those positions weren't profitable, so we'd sit further down the chain. But then there'd be other keywords, like let's say, for example, if I was to bid on glow sticks, for example, the average sale might be less, so it became a whole new formula for that particular keyword. So we got quite detailed on this formula in how we executed it.
You started going granular by the products.
Yeah, that's right. Products or even themes, or depending on the keyword, and you classified the keywords into themes, products.
Yeah,
you know,
that's smart.
Generic, and then they had particular. I mean, with Google, you can track what sales those keywords are generating, so you could see the average sale for a particular keyword. So if that keyword's generating your average sale of $40, it's a different mathematical equation to the one that's generating you $100 orders.
Of course. Were you focusing on SEO like simultaneously, or and I guess at some point it became important, maybe from the start or not, but back in the day before Google Ads before they were super expensive, like back in 1 cent, even 10 cents, like 1 cent, that just blew my mind. I'm 34, so I think 1 cent, how old was I? Maybe I was like 16 or 15 or something. I don't know. Anyway, when the cost per click started to increase, a lot of brands started to think about, you know, what are the other ways we can continue to scale?
Yeah.
Because like you're saying, if you're at position 4, 5, or 6, you're not paying, you know, you're not paying a very high cost per click. However, you're still tapping into part of the volume. But that is not going to get you to scale if you want to go really aggressive.
Yeah. As we grow, I mean, obviously our journey is going to be different to someone, say, starting up today.
Yeah.
Where when we started, it was, like I said, very simple. It was a matter of having a keyword. Then it sort of progressed to optimizing, if you like, because Google got more sophisticated. So you mentioned SEO. Well, SEO does impact your ads now. So in the beginning, it didn't. It was just pretty much how much you bid. I think it was cost per click times click-through rate. That was the formula Google used to rank ads. Yeah, they told you it. They said, this is the formula. We base it based on that. That's the only formula. Now it's much more complicated.
Of course.
But as Google changed, we adapted. So, you know, we did focus on things like SEO and things like that to get those ads, optimize the ads. Yeah. Because I make it sound simple, like it's just about the formula. But, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that formula. There's a lot of inputs, not just the bid strategy. That's just one strategy. The ad text, making sure you have the keyword in the ad text and the different insertion and all the different complexities that Google has by optimizing all the different elements of what Google puts into making rankings happen, or making your click-through rate better, or making your relevance better. All those things ended up. So it becomes much more complicated today than it was when I started. But certainly, I mean, we as well, you know, we've started branching out into different strategies. You know, cost per click strategy is not even a large part of what we do now. It's a lot more branding now. But, you know, we've been able to grow to get to a point where branding can be a strategy. I certainly speak to a lot of startups all the time, and I say, now focus on conversion marketing. You know, that forget brand marketing. Don't think about, I'm going to put a billboard or I'm going to put something on a bus. Forget that stuff. Focus on conversion marketing. Whether it's right or wrong, the fact is you'll be able to control it. You can see it and you can measure it. The other stuff you can't measure. So you're shooting in the dark. So, because I mean, I would preface all of that by saying, look, different marketing works for different brands. Some brands are better on social. Some brands work better on, TV.
Depends on the business model. If you B2B, it's a completely different ballgame too.
That's right. That's right. So I wouldn't say it's a one-size-fits-all solution, but certainly if you're a startup, conversion marketing, I mean, if you can measure it, you can start small and scale it. Yeah. So, I think it just depends for different people at different points in their journey and different strategies. Yeah.
I'm not sure how much you like to give away in terms of your strategy, but I'm sure the competitors are watching.
I'm sure they will. I pick up ones when my competitors are talking, so why wouldn't they? I mean, it'd be crazy not to, right?
Of course. I was wondering how diversified you have decided at some point or are now in your digital advertising strategy away from just Google and in other channels, including like native ads, programmatic, Facebook, social, the whole lot?
Yeah. Yeah, look, we're pretty diversified. I'd say more recently we're focusing a little bit more on PR. And I'm sure we'll go into that in a bit of detail some stage. But yes, certainly we found a lot of merit in PR because I guess we've probably underpinned it with a lot of other marketing. And now we can focus on building the brand. You know, and it's all a bit of an integrated marketing strategy, but having different marketing is always good. But certainly we found lately that bang for buck, I mean, PR, you know, when it comes to PR, people are, my thinking is this, that people are actually watching you or reading about you because they actually want to, which is super powerful when it comes to marketing. If they're watching an ad, you know, a legitimate story that they're reading because they want to is going to beat that 10 times to 1. I mean, we screen ads all the time. We don't want to look at them if we can help it. So we've focused on PR a lot more recently.
Yeah, I mean, earned media, an alternative name for PR is very powerful because, and I'll just say this quickly and we'll go back to the sequence and then we'll address PR separately. The reason it's powerful is because you, as most people know, you get opinions from, or you get the story, not from the business owner or the business. It's someone who you look up to. It could be, you know, a news publication, it could be a magazine, or someone that you tune into and respect and trust the word, and they publish a story, and then you're like, okay, cool, I like that. Maybe I should check them out. So it's like your older brother or sister or your parent or your best friend telling you, dude, you have to check this product out. It's almost similar to that, where
it's much more trustworthy if it's like that.
Yeah, whereas digital ads, as powerful as they are, you know, you have that sort of barrier which smart advertisers know how to cross, but you have that barrier of being like the sales guy knocking on the door saying, hey, check this out, right? That's cool. The second point was the partnership and being a yin and yang, like you and your brother, you focusing on certain things and him focusing on other things that kind of like supplementing each other and in a way like mutually exclusive that just came in together really, really well.
Yeah, look, I saw some stuff recently that actually made me realize why it works between my brother. And I've looked at the Clifton Strengths. Have you heard of that? The Clifton Strengths? No. Basically, it's a philosophy that people should play to their strengths, not their weaknesses. You know, we're taught in school, if you're weak at that particular subject, you need more help there and all that. And I won't go into all the details because it's a big philosophy and it's got its pros and cons, like any concept, and it's got its haters and lovers. But look, I'm a big fan of it personally, and it's because what the thinking is that I think of it like this as speaking, right? Because I speak a lot lately, but I'm not a fantastic speaker. I speak because I have good content to share or that people want to hear. Maybe whether I call it good or not is another story. But I've got content that people want to hear, but I speak. But look, I want to be an amazing speaker, but naturally I'm not gifted at speaking, right? So I'm never going to be that amazing speaker that's going to be TEDx on stage because I don't have the raw talent to multiply with the fact that I've got, you know, something to say. So it's a multiplier effect. So it's like raw talent times, I think they say raw talent times
effort.
Yeah, effort basically. So if I put all the effort in the world into speaking, I'm still never going to be that world-class speaker, right? But if you're great at something and you multiply that times effort, well, then you can be amazing at it. And so it's a bit like that with the business. And that's kind of what I learned that very recently. I didn't learn that in the beginning, but it kind of explains to me why it works so well with my brother. We're spending a lot of time and effort on the things that we're good at, and we keep getting better and better at them. And we just, so I'm hopeless when it comes to managing people and IT, you know, hardware, IT stuff and all that. But he's got it's like a learning curve for him. He's started off with it and he's getting better at it. And by him focusing on that, he's excellent at that stuff. So we've actually become excellent in separate areas, but obviously in a way you could argue that we're hopeless in those things because we've neglected those areas of our personal development. But from a business point of view, that's, I think, the most efficient strategy. And it's working really well for me and my brother. So we have that yin and yang, and we focus on our strengths, and we get better at our strengths. Because I think in business, the hard thing is you have to be a jack of all trades. You know, they say, well, it's almost like you have to be, to win in business, you have to be excellent at everything, which makes it so hard to be good at everything. Like, how can you be an expert at everything? And that's where I guess a business partner comes in that things that I hate or not naturally gifted at, someone else is there to take on those tasks, and I can focus on what I'm good at and what I love doing in the business.
I think you have to be good enough to be able to steer the ship, but not be at the top of your game in every single thing, because no one is, right? Every CEO is strong in one or two or three or four, but not every single area. And that's why you have, CMOs, you have all that stuff. So, when you scale it down, that's on a large enterprise level. But when you scale it down to a startup, if you are a one-man show or one-man band and you're starting out, you've got to know a little bit about legal. You've got to, right? There's no way out, I
mean, I took the bins out when we started the business. I was taking the bins out every day. I mean, you got to do everything in the business when you're starting out.
Yeah, exactly. You were a chief taking bins out, dude. But the point is, you've got to know, you've got to know a bit of marketing. You've got to know a bit of sales. You've got to know a bit of product development, etc. But I'm with you on the idea of play to your strengths.
Yeah, because you got to know how to ask the right questions. Of that area.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't manage the people, but I certainly need to know when to ask questions about whether we're managing them the right way.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm asking questions, not telling him the answers. I'm just asking the right questions, and usually asking the right questions actually ends up with the person figuring out the solution themselves. Quite often he asks me questions that are always difficult, and then I start thinking about it and think, oh shit, I hate that he's asking me this question. But when I think about it, I think, shit, I need to fix that. So just merely asking the right questions of each other is, I guess, another key factor.
Questions are the answers.
Questions, asking the right questions.
Yeah, questions are the answers.
Oh yeah.
I read that somewhere. It kind of resonated. Like when you ask the question, like the act of asking the question brings the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
So just quickly on what you said around hating things and loving things, and strengths and weaknesses, do you find that, is it more that when you love something, you become really good at it? Or the opposite, that if you're not good at something, you just hate it? Or, is it just like, okay, I know I'm really good at that, so I love it? Or I love this doing X, Y, and Z, so I become really good at it?
I think it's both. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but like on one hand, like I think of my career pre-party people, the party people. I was a business analyst. I loved my job, and I was super passionate about it, and I progressed. And I think it was a spiraling effect. The more I loved it, the better I got at it. The better I got at it, the more fun I had with it.
Yeah.
The more confident I got, and the more and it just spiraled upwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think on one hand, it's true that just being good at something means you'll love it more. But on the same token, I would say when you run a business, you don't look at the things, like I said, taking the bins out, for example. You don't look at that as something you hate at the time. I mean, as you get more busy, you start thinking, well, I should delegate. But when you're at the beginning, you don't look at those things as things you hate. So you actually probably get good at, no joke, I know this sounds ridiculous, but taking the bins out, you get good at it, right? You get good at packing the bin, you get good at playing Tetris, you get you get good at it, and you may not necessarily love it, but you sort of start enjoying that process, you know what I mean? And so I think it works the other way too, because you're focused on a mission and an end goal, and you see the longer game that you're playing, and you're taking the bins out because that just needs to be done, and that's part of running the business. So I'd say it works both ways. And I think that's probably more. Look, I'm an optimist, so it's easy for me to say all of this because I always look on the bright side of everything.
Welcome to the club.
So people probably take the bins and go, oh, fuck, I got to take the bins out. Bloody hell, this life's horrible. So I don't know. I looked at all those tasks that maybe in the beginning, now I don't enjoy so much because I can delegate. But at the time I did them and they didn't bother me at the time.
Yeah. And I think that is really what separates, like, I would say this to anyone: if you want to know if you would a, be good at being a business owner or an entrepreneur, apart from all the other things that, or the traits or whatever, it's the ability to enjoy and be okay and like doing everything, especially at the start, and be okay with it.
Yeah.
Because starting out is always going to be you doing things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right. But if you find enjoyment in getting good at them as you go, that's a win, and then you go from there.
And then you move on from them. You may not do them
eventually
again.
You do.
Yeah.
Cool. So we covered that, and so we covered the first 2 points. Onto the third point, which was
people.
Cool. So everyone goes, to have a successful business, you gotta have the right people in the right job, all that stuff. And you guys have been able to grow over the last 10 years and maybe longer, and obviously part of it is people. Do you have a way of a philosophy or an approach to hiring that you think is the right way? Or
look, I guess my brother's the people person, so he's the if he was sitting here, he'd be the best person to answer this question. Look, I don't know if we fully know why things have gone the way they have for us. I mean, my store, interestingly, we talk about this point because a couple of weeks ago, my store manager of my Des Moines store was won the 2020 Store Manager of the Year by the National Retail Association.
Congrats!
Julianne Benj won that award from my store, so she got a bit of a shout out there. We call her Smoddy now, Store Manager of the Year. And I guess, look, she's one of the people that's certainly helped us along the journey, and is a key person. But we identified a stat. I can't remember the exact stats at the moment, but probably about 12 months ago, 18 months ago, that of our top 10 people in our organization, all of them had been with us minimum 7 years or something like that. I mean, we've only been in business, we've only owned the business for about 10 years, 11 years now, 12 years. So that was a crazy stat to look at it like that we just haven't had that turnover at the top level. But we do have quite a bit of turnover at the bottom level. I think we work out the average life expectancy for someone on the front level was averaging around a year. So I think we're doing something right in the way. I mean, we certainly hire. Julie started as a retail assistant. Everyone starts with us at the front line, regardless of where they're going or what their eventual why we recruited them. They all start at the front level, and that's a deliberate strategy. And it seems to be working for us because I think the people that start there then have an appreciation for.
Right. So you never hire managers or senior managers.
No, we always promote from within.
From within. Interesting.
And even if sometimes it can be difficult because you think, do I have the right person for that role?
Yeah.
But we look at it that, maybe we'll recruit from someone, but they've got to start as a retail assistant. And we get plenty of good people we have to turn away from roles because they come in and say, I want to come in to that manager role. And we're saying, no, we want you to start. And they're like, well, I've been a manager for years. Why would I start from the bottom? And we just think, well, it just doesn't fit our process. So we let them go. But, you get situations where people like Julie, who started from the bottom and now, is basically the top dog in our organization, if you want to call it, top girl. And, and she started at the bottom, and I think she, she understands how the whole company works because she's gone through that level.
Yeah.
But also, people who work their way and earn their way into the roles, I guess, certainly have a different, I think, mental attitude towards things than people who are gifted it from the start. Look, it's rightly or wrong, but it's just the strategy we've employed, and it seems to be working for us.
I mean, I tend to like that strategy more than the other one, which is be open to bringing people from outside or inside. I think hiring from outside has its pros and cons, and it comes down to the organization, the leadership. My views are, if your strategy is about promoting from within, you're basically telling everyone that opportunities are there up for grabs, and your potential is like all these opportunities are there for you. So it's up to you if you want to take them or not. And it kind of like breeds that culture of I guess motivation and hunger that I can do this and I can get there. In some organizations, if the minute people feel that, oh, this senior position, they're looking outside to bring someone from outside, it kind of, there's two things that can be like a disadvantage. One, people inside the organization being a little bit demotivated, right? And then the second one is respect. And I think respect is, I'm talking about like professional respect as well. Like how much respect I have for the skill set and the experience that you bring in, and knowing and believing that whatever you're going to bring to the table is going to be the right thing and is going to give us a lot of value. So that respect, sometimes, I say that because it's not obviously not all the time, especially if you're coming from maybe a competition or you have a long track record, or it depends on the situation. But knowing the business inside and out, by virtue of being in the business for many years, you tend to know a lot more than the outsider, right? And so every outsider, they have this learning curve of knowing the ins and outs of how a business operates. And so you may not have that level of respect as a team or employees. And this is purely just my opinion, right? It's not backed up by science.
No, fair enough. But look, it's hard. I mean, it's hard what you're saying as well. By every every organization is different. I mean, we try to treat our organization like a family business, which is easy when you're small, but it's much harder as you grow. And we're about 30 employees now, so it's certainly much harder now than it was in the beginning when we were one operation, one team, 5 people. So certainly it changes, and I think it's just something we've sort of found a groove, if you like, and the recruitment process we have works, and people come up, and like you were saying, in terms of knowledge, I guess we've traded off the fact of bringing in outside ideas, and skills that already fit the role, to giving people the opportunity to learn those skills with the knowledge they have of the company already, because they may not have management experience, but they what they make up for that in the fact that they understand how the retail role works inside out, because they've done it for 2 years, and when it comes to these roles, there are a lot of exceptions, which by being in the role for so long at a lower level, then moving up, they then understand all these intricacies and the other intricacies of the other roles in the organization, which they may not get exposed to that much. They'll understand. We also do a lot of cross training, so people tend to perform their role but be trained up in something else, so that when people go and leave and all that sort of stuff, they have that. So then obviously then if we're recruiting internally, this person might have done 4 or 5 different roles. They potentially understand half the company. So I think it works for us, but it just depends on your organization.
Yeah, I think the advantage of bringing someone from outside is the creative output that you get, because when you, obviously not all the time, but when you work within 4 walls or an organization for quite some time, and granted you innovate and you change and you do things differently over time, but having that outsider who doesn't think inside any box, right? They see things from different perspective, can bring a creative value, I think.
Yeah, I think also for us, one other thing I'm just thinking now I'm talking to you is that we have a very tough work environment as well. It's very fast paced, so we demand a lot from people. We have a lot of fun along the way, don't get me wrong, but it's a very fast paced environment, and it's probably just like that process we have sorts them out early. We get that turnover, and the people that then hang on are actually the right cultural fit, which is really hard to find that they fit. And then when they fit, they end up staying, pretty much if they get past 3 years, they end up staying for 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think we're finding a lot more of those type people in the way we manage our process. But I guess it works for us.
Awesome. All right, let's jump into my favorite topic, PR.
Yeah.
You are the PR machine. You are the PR machine. You were showing me 2 weeks ago when we spoke how you're ranking for some keywords like just the word party, right? And
I hope when people look up this podcast, we're still ranking there. But
well, I testify that when I looked it up, you were ranking number 1.
Yep.
And obviously that's not the main point, but the fact that you've been very successful in your PR has had its own benefits on other marketing channels like SEO. So I'm super curious about how did the whole PR capability, for the lack of a better term, grow? How did how did it come about? What made you so good, or what made the party people so good at PR? And I know you went to the Shark Tank. You've been everywhere. Yeah. So
look, I got some coaching on it, because in the first, you mentioned earlier in the podcast how we've been doing PR for many years. We've only really been focused on it in the last 5 years, maybe 4 years. And obviously we've done a lot of PR in the last 4 years on steroids. But prior to that, we probably were in the boat of most growing startups, if you like, that were just like, I don't give a shit about what people think about me, or I don't need to win any awards to tell me that I'm good at what I do. I just want to kick ass and run a great business. And that's what we did for the first few years. We didn't do any PR. We just focused on growing the business, and we got all that massive growth and didn't want to tell anyone about it. We didn't want our competitors to know what we were doing. We wanted to try to fly under the radar as much as we possibly could. But then I got some coaching from my uncle at the time, and he's at a publishing business, so he knows a lot about PR. And he just gave me a bit of a lecture on I need to be the brand, and if I'm a brand in myself, and I get out there and tell our story and just put myself out there personally, that'll be good for business. It's not detrimental and going to distract you. It'll drive sales if you do it right. Saying go out there, talk to celebrities, go and be a celebrity yourself. Try to get your name out there as much as you can, because it's good for business. Don't just sit there and try to kick ass, because a lot of people have great businesses, but they never ever end up going anywhere because they don't focus on the brand. And so I got this big lecture. Look, I've told you all that in 30 seconds, but it was like a
30 hours
1 hour lecture, this thing I got. And so that then prompted me around the chief party dude thing. And then I think about 12 months later, we ended up on Shark Tank, which was probably the biggest PR thing we've done, one of the biggest.
The golden question. Yeah. Were you trying to get investment, or was it more for PR, or was it both?
Look, it was certainly we were hoping for investment. Like we weren't just there for the PR only. Yeah. But certainly we obviously I was very conscious of the PR aspect of it, and I leveraged it as much as I could. So, I mean, the episode aired 6 months after I did it. The press release went out pretty much when the episode finished airing. Yeah. We were ready to go. So, I guess, certainly we leveraged the PR the hell out of that, and still are today, PRing the hell out of that. But
did you take any feedback on board from what the Sharks gave?
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, look, they were great, and I got to be careful what I say too much about what happens backstage, but certainly, obviously, what happens on screen is not what happens backstage. It's TV. Yep. And it makes it, for anyone who watches it, I think you can go watch it on YouTube. Yeah. The pitch I did, they make it very dramatic. Yeah. Look, the Sharks were good to me. There was a lot of conversation in there. That there was advice and stuff, and I've certainly become much better at pitching since then. I mean, the pitch wasn't too bad actually. It was not a bad pitch for my first time pitching, but I've certainly become much more refined at pitching since then. In different aspects of the business. I mean, learning to pitch there, and what I've learned since then about pitching, I now apply to any type of pitching, whether it's pitching for sales, pitching for, all that sort of stuff. But certainly, I learned a lot. But yeah, look, we were hoping for investment, but in hindsight, what we were pitching was never going to be invested in. And that's why Janine Ellis turned me down. Well, that's why I turned Janine Ellis down in the end. We just couldn't meet in the middle when we were negotiating. Look, I got an offer. That's a great situation to be in, but I turned it down in the end because we weren't going to meet at a valuation that I was comfortable with. And in hindsight, that valuation was never going to be acceptable to an investor. So, I would say we were up for the investment. We were open to the investment, but certainly we knew that a big benefit of going on there was PR, and we put on a good pitch. I did a big display, nice, and dropped balloons all over the Sharks and stuff like that. Made it really TV friendly because I knew the PR ability of it, and I wanted to leverage it as much as I could.
Of course. Awesome. I guess that kind of covers the PR piece. Was there anything else that you wanted to add on how you've been able to create a solid PR capability?
Look, I probably could talk all day about PR because it's not a simple system. Or like, I mean, you mentioned that I'm crazy at PR. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but I know it edges on about 100 pieces in media we get over, I think, a year, I think.
100 pieces a year?
At least. And we're not talking small stuff. We're talking papers, smart company, retail magazines, industry magazines or newspapers or TV.
How many of these would you say are pushed, or how many of these would you say are earned, truly earned, like you didn't put any effort to get them? It's just someone woke up one day and said, oh, I like these guys, I'm going to write an article about. And then how many would you say are you kind of had to push the train to make it happen?
It's probably about 50-50, I would say.
Wow.
50-50. So half the time they say, hey, I want to, I love what you do. I want to do I can't even remember how we connected, to be honest. Did you reach out to me?
I reached out.
Oh, you did? There we go.
Yeah.
So 50% of the time, that's what happens.
Yeah.
People say, I love your story, or I love what you talk about there. Can you come and do more of that? And half the time, I'll go and pitch. But, I mean, again, I could talk about pitching all day, but certainly it's a very targeted thing to do. And we were talking before this, obviously, and the listeners won't get the benefit of that conversation, but I could talk hours about the PR strategy, but a lot of it's about making it efficient. So, I think one of the key points about what we were talking about pre the podcast was when I pitch, what I'm aiming for is one pitch, a conversion on that pitch. That's it. 5-minute job, not hours and hours trying to figure out a PR strategy. It's like, I'll see something, I'll pitch at it when it's appropriate, or I pitch an appropriate story. And I mentioned to you the one about, we'll talk about that now since I think it was a very relevant one, where, I pitched to the National Online Retail Association an article about, I'm a retailer. I was sick of getting pitched by service providers, and I pitched them an article about, I'm a retailer, here's how to pitch to me. I mean, that was very relevant to them. I went to them specifically because I knew that their audience was the perfect audience for this particular content, and I knew their audience would love it. And so they published, they didn't even think about it. As soon as they said, this is great, let's publish this. And I spent 5 minutes writing it because I lived it. So just wrote all the things I hate about people pitching me, just wrote it.
Yeah.
And the response was huge, and I mean, the point of that is that it was a very specific pitch. So when I pitch, I'm pitching something that I'm pretty confident they're going to want to publish. So I'm pitching it to a person who I know will publish it. So I won't pitch just any story to anybody. It'll be specific. When I pitch to the retail industry magazines, I'll pitch something very different to if I'm pitching to a podcast.
Of course,
that I want to jump on a podcast. It'll be a very different pitch.
Yeah.
And I don't even look at it like pitching. It's like, I'm going to give them some value, and I'm throwing it out there, saying, here, check this out. I know you're going to love this.
Yep.
And like I said, I'm aiming for that one pitch, one conversion. It's one or two pitches. I'm not just going out there spraying a press release across 50 outlets and hoping one sticks.
Yeah. So you don't cast your net a little bit wider.
No.
You don't go and say, okay, this is a cool story about something we've done. I'm going to reach out to 5 or 10 publications and see who's interested?
Generally not, no.
Okay.
No. Look, I mean, if we win it, like a good example is winning that award.
Yep.
I mean, I know that'll suit the retail industry publication, so I'll go to them. But, beyond that, there's not really a lot of other people that are that interested in it. Like, I mean, if I went to the newspaper, I'd waste the journalist's time, and probably next time I pitch to him, he won't listen to me. So when I pitch we appear in News Corp publications, newspapers, online, all that quite frequently. And it's because now I've actually generated a rapport with those journalists. So when I pitch to them, they actually listen. They're not going, oh, here's another press release. Like when I pitch to them, they're like, all right, cool. Yeah, your content's always good. Let's see if we can squeeze that in somewhere. Like I might be pitching about Halloween, for example. I think, okay, Halloween's coming up. I know that they're going to want to write something about Halloween. I'll go to News Corp and say, all right, it's COVID. We've got some great ideas on how people can have COVID Halloween this year. You know what I mean? Very relevant, timely, and I know they're going to publish it. And so it's a very specific pitch.
What do you do when someone rejects? Because I'm sure, rejection is just the name of the game. Not everyone's going to go, yep, cool. What do you do when a pitch gets rejected? Do you say, okay, well, hold on a sec. I think there might be something here that you might not see. Or do you say, okay, thank you very much, and you go to someone else? Or do you go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what else can I go back and offer to the same person that I spoke to?
Yeah, look, it's a combination of the last two. Definitely not the first one. If they say, no, I don't go, oh, but maybe. I just think better leave that. I don't want to damage that relationship by pushing a story. But it'll be a combination of the last two, which is I'll go pitch it to someone else for sure. But then I'll also ask myself the question, geez, I thought that pitch would work. Otherwise, I wouldn't have pitched it. Why didn't it work? And usually the second time around, it will be a little bit different and a little bit more refined, probably to the competitor of the one that rejected it. And that's how I'll do it pretty much. But I won't spend heaps of time. I mean, if it's and I also won't have written the story yet. I'll just have it roughly in my head what it is, or depending on what it, whether it's a story or a podcast or whatever, depends on what it is. But if it's a story, I won't have written it yet until I've had that conversation with the journalist, because it often will take a different angle that you might not have expected. You might say, right, I want to do a COVID Halloween, and they'll say, oh yeah, but we want to focus it on kids only, forget the adult stuff. And, so the journalist will actually help you point,
right. So you don't fully finish it. Obviously you just have an idea and maybe a level of detail on what the angle is or the hook or whatever, but you're not really sharing like, here's the entire piece. What do you think of it? Would you like to publish it?
Yeah. And it kind of wraps up nicely what we talked about at the beginning, which is the chief party dude. That's another deliberate strategy where, I'm saying to them, I'm the expert. I'm the chief party dude. When it comes to parties, I'm the expert. And here's why my comment is important for you. And, the media love that. They want to publish a comment from the chief party dude about how to have a great Halloween, So it just makes a lot of sense. I mean, it sounds like it might, I hate when people say common sense, but it kind of makes a lot of sense, right? That these things all sort of come together. And just on other things, like obviously you go into my LinkedIn profile and that's filled out, and all these things make a difference when it comes to PR in having a very holistic approach to it, because you got to understand people are going to look you up. They're going to want to know why. So your personal brand matters.
It's a snowball effect.
Definitely snowball. 100% snowball. I mean, I reach out to journalists now because I've got a bunch of journalist contacts that have done stories on me in the past, and I can say, hey, I want you to do this story. I couldn't have done that in the beginning because I didn't know any journalists. And I was cold doing it. I'd be going through the paper, looking up who wrote what stories that were in my area and trying to figure out, that's the journalist I want to hit, and hope that it was the right person when I reached out to them. Where now, you're right. It's a bit more of a snowball effect, and I have a profile and makes it easier as your profile builds. So it's snowball 100%. Effect for sure.
Amazing. Cool. I think I ran out of questions. I was wondering if there was anything that you kind of wanted to touch on.
No, I think we've had a lot of fun, I guess, talking about all these
we have
different topics and
covered a lot of things.
In areas that we're obviously particularly good in. I mean, like you said, PR is probably one of our areas we punch well above our weight. We were talking about, we rank really well. And even when it comes to, our competitors, there's a lot of department stores that have party sections and things like that. Google and even if you ask people in the street who's bigger in party, they'd be thinking the party people before they thought of Big W or something. So that's where PR has become a key strategy for us, and that's something we're probably particularly strong in more recently. So I think we've covered probably an area where I like to talk about at the moment.
Yeah. Actually, I got a question.
Shoot.
Last question.
Shoot.
What's the vision for the party people in the next 5 years in terms of expanding into other areas? How do you see the growth? What are you focusing on? Branding, whatever. You know, if I were to say, okay, Dean, tell me, how do you see the company in 5 years from product?
It's a very good question. It's a very difficult question with COVID going on at the moment, I would say, because depending on when, if, how things go back to normal, will depend on how our strategy unfolds. And at the moment, we're actually spending a fair bit of time thinking about our strategy in terms of, I don't know if you call it, I guess you call it contingency. What if the environment goes this way? What is our strategy? What if the environment goes that way? What is our strategy? And having strategies depending on how the market evolves. Because COVID could still be around for quite some time. And that will certainly, I mean, parties were illegal when COVID first started, and certainly even now gatherings are not.
Illegal?
Were illegal when COVID first hit. You couldn't have gatherings of more than 10 people at home or whatever.
When they first introduced the lockdown.
When they first introduced the lockdown, So, I mean, even now there's still restrictions on gatherings. And that's not good for business. So our business is not in amazing shape as a result.
Of
but
course.
certainly, if that continues, it makes it very difficult to grow in this current environment. But if things start to change, then we want to be ready. So it's about having the right strategy. Certainly our vision for the business is to open up multiple bricks and mortar outlets. We see a lot of value in that. And also growing the digital footprint a lot more. There are some other projects which I can't talk about here, which are sort of a bit less core business, if you like, that are certainly aligned with the party people. And I guess the thing we do when it comes to thinking about strategy is just, again, thinking about how the customer has changed over the years and what does the customer expect from a party store today. And we think of it like this, that we're in the business of helping people have parties. We're not in the business of selling party supplies. And that small distinction actually helps us think about our strategy much more clearly.
Amazing. Well, it's been a lot of fun talking to you, learning about your story, the story of the business. It's amazing.
Thanks for having me on.
I hope everyone watching or listening enjoy it as much as I did, because I quite did. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime.
Cheers.